Hey everybody, it's your old pal John from Humor and History. We are going to watch Unfinished London and what happened to the old London Bridge. I'm actually kind of curious about this one, so I wanted to know, so let's go.
The River Thames is the reason London exists. Back in the year 43,
Yeah.
the Romans chose this spot to build a bridge and found their city of Londinium, connected by road to the rest of Britain and by sea to the rest of the world.
While there's nothing physical left of the Roman bridge itself, except this apparently, it's thanks to the Roman bridge that modern London is where it is today. Here.
After the Romans left, various temporary wooden bridges came and went on this site. Probably.
I love that. I love the use of
But it
SimCity.
wasn't until 1209 when along came a proper permanent one made of stone. And it was a corker.
Like many bridges in medieval Europe, London Bridge was a living bridge with shops, houses, a church, and tiny people made of plasticine.
The roadway was so narrow and the roofs on the buildings stuck out so far that the dark passageway felt almost like a tunnel. At its most congested, it could take an hour to get across.
You know, that's interesting. I never thought of, and I guess I should, but obviously not growing up in London or not really even in school being taught much about London other than, you know, what its impact was on the world, but not about London specifically itself. I knew there were people that lived essentially on the bridge, or there was housing on the bridge, which is a very interesting idea. But just to see it like that's very interesting. It's very cool.
To manage congestion, the city corporation charged a toll to cross the bridge and ordered that all northbound traffic use the west side and all southbound use the east side. This may be the origin of why we now drive on the left in Britain.
I just checked and it isn't.
Oh,
One disappointing thing about the otherwise brilliant bridge was its dull name. But the reason for its dull name was quite interesting.
London Bridge was, for many centuries, the only bridge in London. Which is
Oh,
surprising
yeah.
given how many thousands of people lived and worked on both sides of the river. So why was it like this for so long?
The Bridge House Estates,
Good
which ran
question.
London Bridge on behalf of the City of London Corporation, made a great deal of money from the tolls, and they were keen to keep it that way.
In 1664, when
go figure. The reason why something isn't more convenient, it's because of money. Yeah.
King Charles II started making plans to build his own bridge over the Thames, the city corporation persuaded him to forget about it with a free loan, open brackets, massive bribe, close brackets, of £100,000.
Yeah.
Despite the stronghold the city corporation strong held over the river, London got on absolutely fine with just the one bridge. Because, rather bizarrely, most Londoners never used it.
Unless you had a horse and cart full of heavy
I was just gonna say, I know, most people, you know, before cars or before, you know, a lot of more modern technology of the 20th century, I guess, they probably never really left the area that they were in. It's the way it was kind of in the U.S.
stuff, why bother using the expensive and slow London Bridge when you can simply hop on a wherry?
Wherries, pronounced wherries, were long, thin boats that could
Okay, I didn't think about that.
carry up to 5 people. The streets of London were so congested that a wherry was often the fastest way to get around town, whether you needed to cross the river or not.
Okay.
The men who rode the wherries, the watermen, were the taxi drivers of their day. They had to know the locations of all the stairs and the times when the tide came in and out. In their heyday, there were more than 10,000 of them on the river.
Your Uber?
And so, London remained merrily monobridged throughout the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th and 17th century.
17th
And that
century.
was
that
fine by
was-
everybody. Until
In 1720, the Prime Minister Robert Walpole was in a rush to get back to Westminster for an important debate in Parliament after visiting the King. When he arrived at the Fulham Horse Ferry, the watermen were having a pint on the opposite side of the river, and they refused to come across until they'd finished their drink. Walpole missed the debate, and from that day declared war on the river.
Oh, this is all your fault!
Walpole presented a bill to Parliament making the legislation to allow new bridges over the Thames for the first time, whether the City Corporation or the watermen liked it or not, which led to London finally getting its bridge number 2 right outside the Houses of Parliament.
Westminster
Which is always interesting because, you know, so many people end up adapting and depending upon a particular thing, and you make a change, and there are so many things that change because of it. I mean, if you just take something as simple as the invention of the car, I know this is a stretch, but now you have signals, you have roads, different kinds of roads, right? New roads, parts for cars, people that know how to work on cars. Like everything completely changes. New skill set has to adapt. But yeah, I mean, then the people who are the wherrymen, they have to do something else. I mean, it puts a lot of people out of jobs when you have change, but you know, in the long run, That's the short-sightedness, I guess, versus the long-sightedness. But, sometimes when you live day to day, paycheck to paycheck, I get that.
Westminster Bridge opened in 1750, bringing London Bridge's centuries of monopoly to an end. Not everyone was happy about this. The City Corporation demanded compensation, so the Crown gave them compensation, which they used to get revenge on Westminster Bridge by building Blackfriars Bridge in 1769, giving Londoners a whopping 3 bridges to choose from.
Ooh.
Crossing by bridge had now become a lot easier and faster and more normal than crossing by wherry.
This was bad news for the watermen, who were already having a really tough time with the closure of the theatres
I
on the
knew
South
it,
Bank.
yeah.
It was the beginning of the end for the wherries.
But amazingly, they never disappeared completely. Hundreds of years later, the company of Waterman and Lighterman is still around today, and they still stage a protest whenever a new bridge is proposed. How's that going for you? London was growing up, and it was time to say goodbye to the old-fashioned traditional things that were holding it back. And that included London Bridge itself.
Over the centuries, London Bridge had become
Oh.
a medieval relic that was far too narrow for 18th century traffic. The bridge needed a makeover.
So in 1761, to make a bit more room, the Bridge House Estates decided to remove the houses and shops from the bridge.
But it was no good. The structure was still a crumbling death trap that needed repairing every 5 minutes, as made famous in the nursery rhyme Humpty Dumpty. The whole thing had to go.
And so, in 1831, Old London Bridge was replaced by New London Bridge, designed by a father and son team, both called John Rennie.
To avoid disruption and ease construction, New London Bridge was built slightly to the left of where the Old London Bridge was.
Okay.
If you look carefully at a modern map, you can clearly see how the old streets line up to show exactly where the Old London Bridge used to be.
Oh, cool.
London's bridgevolution was only just beginning. In the 19th century, with London's population swelling faster than ever on both sides of the river, new bridges were being thrown across the Thames one after the other like kerplunk. Bridges for people, horses, and these new things called trains too. London just couldn't get enough of them. Bridges, 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 bridges.
London Bridge wasn't special anymore. It blended in with all the others, getting on with its job in a no-nonsense sort of way.
Right.
After 130 years, which in London terms isn't really that long, London Bridge already found itself once again in a bit of a pickle.
By the 1960s, London had turned into a car city. To make room for all the commuters that wanted to use it, London Bridge would need to at least triple in width.
The City Corporation once again had the expensive task of building a modern bridge in place of the old one. But the trouble was, in the 20th century, it was much harder to raise the huge amount of money needed for this sort of project. And so, they made the unusual but ingenious decision to put the Two Rennies Bridge up for sale.
Brochures and
That's interesting. I wonder if they got that idea. It's 1831. In Brooklyn, New York, they somebody tried to sell the Brooklyn Bridge to somebody, claiming that they owned it. That they could sell it, and but that's an interesting idea.
TV ads were produced, offering a unique piece of British history to the highest bidder. The highest bidder was American oil tycoon and chainsaw manufacturer Robert P. McCulloch,
Oh, I just got a bridge!
who had the
Texans, of course.
Old London Bridge shipped across the Atlantic brick by brick and put back together in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, where it's become something of a tourist attraction.
There's a famously not true at all urban myth that McCulloch thought he was buying the much more famous and impressive Tower Bridge and bought the wrong bridge by mistake. And that's where we get the expression, I bought the wrong bridge by mistake.
Not all of London Bridge went to our...
That's so funny. Oh, leave it to Texans. I mean, but it's just really funny.
Arizona. These steps and this arch from the Rennies Bridge are still here and here today on the South Bank. Whilst it's great that some of the Rennies Bridge has been kept alive, its modern replacement is a structure best described as a shame.
The necessary rebuild of London Bridge in the late 60s coincided with a flash-in-the-pan fashion for brutalist functional architecture.
Okay,
New
yeah.
London Bridge, completed in 1973, is a wide, grey concrete slab devoid of even the slightest hint of its rich history. It's impressive for the sheer amount of nothing there is to say about it.
With London Bridge getting more boring every century, the next one, coming in 2182, will likely be made entirely of beige jumpers. Yep, I think that's everything I can think of about London Bridge. But London does, of course, have many more bridges, and there are lots of interesting things to say about them, too. So if you're not busy, join me next time for another thrill.
All right, that's pretty cool. All right, I did not know that about London Bridge, but yeah, of course, there's money involved in a lot of things. That's the reason why there would only be one. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think it was neat that, and like I said, I did pretty much know this. I had to be reminded though. that they lived on it, and that it was a section of commerce. Yeah, and of course somebody's gonna get rich off of it. What do you guys think? Did you know all this about London Bridge, old London Bridge versus new London Bridge, and these things? Anyway, I thought it was kind of fun. I'm trying to do a little bit more of a deep dive into all things London. So, all right, guys, I'll talk to you later. Don't forget, like, subscribe, share, tell your parents.